Hi everyone, my name is Annie Solar. I'm the Community Programs Manager at Arts of Life, and I'm going to be talking to you today about how mutually beneficial relationships elevate the progressive studio model. What does that mean? I'm going to be talking about how our connections with other people, um, as specifically in our community programs, help drive our mission forward. First, I want to talk a little bit about Arts of Life. Just in case you don't know about us, Arts of Life was founded in 2000 by Denise Fisher and our founding artist, Veronica Ronnie Kuklich. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about Ronnie at the start of this presentation because I think that her legacy is really important in the work that we'll be talking about today. As a young woman, Ronnie attended Dixon State School, which was an institution for people with disabilities and people with mental health disabilities as well. Um, she lived in state operated institutions for many years, but eventually she got to live in the community. And she initially worked in sheltered workshops, but art was really her true calling. And uh, Denny got to know Ronnie and was inspired by her to open Arts of Life, and Ronnie became our founding artist. And yeah, I just love her artwork. It's obviously beautiful, and I think that her spirit shines through in this photo of her. I never met Ronnie, but I find her to be a very inspiring person, and I'm really glad that she got to be in the community and out of institutions. When I first started in my role as community programs manager, my manager, Tim, had me watch a documentary called Valuing Lives. And so I got to know about this principle called the normalization principle. And I just want to talk a little bit about that before I talk about community programs, because I think it was a really important thing to learn about. It's a very simple idea. The normalization principle basically is the simple idea that people with disabilities should have access to the same everyday life and community as everyone else. And it's not about like making people normal or anything like that. It's more about embracing inclusivity and normalizing people with disabilities being a part of our culture and of our everyday experience. This concept started becoming popularized in the 1970s, which was about the same time when places like Dixon State School, these institutions like the one that Ronnie was at, were starting to close. So normalization principle was becoming popular around that same time in the 1970s. So why is this concept from the 1970s still important today? Um, I actually think it's really important today, in this moment, because there's been a push away from normalization and a lot of setbacks happening. So we've seen billions slashed from Medicaid. We've seen anti-inclusion, anti-DEI sentiment, growing stigma and misinformation towards people with disabilities, and a push, genuine push towards institutionalization and segregation. Okay, that's heavy stuff, but I think we're in the right space. The work of progressive art studios matters now, maybe more than ever. So let's talk about community programs. I'm going to talk a little bit about our origins and our first partnership, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about a pivot that we made. So our first partnership was with a group called Collaborative Community Housing Initiative. They had this great vision of having an integrated housing space that would be both for people with and without disabilities. And they wanted to have Arts of Life on the first floor of their building. We were really excited. Unfortunately, right as we were ready to launch our side of the community programs, they were they had a setback and they were unable to secure the building, which they were hoping to secure. So we pivoted. And our pivot looked like reaching out to local art centers. So we reached out to the Evanston Art Center and the Art Center in Highland Park. And they were actually really eager to partner with us. These are community spaces and they really want to be accessible. And oftentimes, when it comes to accessibility for folks with disabilities, they just maybe don't have the capacity or know how. And so they were really excited about collaborating with Arts of Life. But we wanted to make sure that our partnerships were sustainable, which was a process of trial and error. So when we first started, we started with these free classes and workshops that we used just to sort of like get our toes in the water, get to know the community, see what would work, what would not work, and experiment. And then the other thing that we did was we had our artists enroll in classes that already were running and led by teachers out at these local art centers. Both of these were really helpful in this trial and error process. We learned a lot from these. Um, and our free workshops, of course, pretty obvious why those would not be sustainable long term. Um, our classes that we were having our artists enroll in at the local art centers were great in some ways. Sometimes the teachers were awesome, and then sometimes there was a little bit of a growth that needed to happen because they weren't used to facilitating people with disabilities. Maybe there was some over facilitation happening, so some growth areas, but overall was really awesome. Not sustainable for the art centers though, because they were providing us scholarships for every one of those students attending those classes. So what we ended up coming up with was actually having our Arts of Life staff, who are almost all have a degree in art and professional artists, actually go out and teach classes at the local art center. And this ended up being a really great model for us. So it was a win-win. We were able to use the facilities at the local art centers, able to have folks from the community who enroll in classes there enroll in the classes that we were leading. And so we had access to community integration, and just new people who really also got to see then through the Arts of Life staff being the teachers, the model. Our artists got to attend the classes for free without having to really have to worry about the scholarship because our teachers, were teaching the classes, so there was no cost to the art centers there. But then they were also able to make a little bit of money off of folks from their community enrolling in our classes. They were able to make some money off of that. So it was a win-win. And I've got some pictures here of some artists in different classes. Ceramics class, some nice facilities there. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit more about those mutually beneficial relationships and how actually I think the important part is that mutually beneficial relationships should be meaningful relationships. So what are some of the meaningful relationships that were developed in these classes? So this is Duffy and Marcello. Duffy O'Connor was a teacher, and Marcello Enyon is one of our Arts of Life artists. Marcello took an intaglio etching class, which is a really involved process. And here he is using a blowtorch. And Duffy was one of those teachers who just like really got it. He just had a great approach to working with Marcello. And Marcello is a primarily non-speaking person, a non-traditional communicator. But Duffy and Marcello just clicked and developed a beautiful relationship. And Marcello went on to continue to take classes completely independently, without support from Arts of Life staff, just through building this great relationship with Duffy. So Marcello still takes classes on his own independently at the local art center. These are some of the etchings that he made in that class. You can also go see Marcello's work on our website. Highly recommended. I also want to talk about Kim Hirschman. This is another example of one of those great relationships that we developed out in the community and an unexpected one. Kim was just someone who enrolled in a class at the Evanston Art Center. She didn't know that she was going to be enrolling in a class that was going to be a mix of people with and without disabilities. She's not someone who identifies as a person with a disability, but she just loved it. She loved the arts of life approach. She loved the artists. She loved she felt inspired, and she ended up taking, I think, 7 classes in a row with us. And these are 10-week classes. So she was with us for, well over a year. And I have a quote here from her. She said, I haven't known many people like the ones enrolled at Arts of Life. It's always rewarding and instructive to look at what they're up to. Yeah, Kim was a great artist, and we're happy to have her and connect with her. And, she said herself that she hadn't had much experience with people with disabilities. And I think this was a great opportunity to make that connection. Chris View is one of our artists from our North Shore studio, who is a fantastic watercolorist and pastel artist. He took a pastel class at the Evanston Art Center and connected with a teacher there named Azada Husseini. She was having a gallery show, invited him to be in the show along with a few of his classmates, gave him a whole wall of his artwork, and he just like really connected with people in that class, with his teacher. And I think it was really meaningful to him too because he lived in Evanston. He was able to drive his wheelchair straight from his apartment to the art center and be in community with his neighbors. So I have a quote from Chris. He said, I can show the community more my ability to make art pieces on the same level as everyone in my class. I made friends. They were open to my way of communication. I use a Dynavox. Okay, last quote. This one is from James Lynch. He is the director of the Art Center in Highland Park, and I just wanted to circle back to the fact that these places are eager to connect and collaborate. And I love this quote from James. And he said, inclusion and diversity doesn't just mean race, religion, and gender, it means everything. So I was thrilled to partner with Arts of Life because everyone should be welcome here. Everyone should have access to the arts. Okay, so let's look ahead at the future. What's next? Much more collaboration. So we're actually going back to that initial partner, and we're really excited. CCHI, the Collaborative Community Housing Initiative, actually secured a building, and we're going to be opening a new space on the first floor of their building, which is in Highland Park, where we've made a lot of connections. And that's going to be happening in May. So we're really excited. We will continue partnering with the Art Center in Highland Park and potentially in this new space have collaborations. The Art Center in Highland Park pointed us to the Park District in Highland Park, which recently closed a pretty significant ceramics program. So in our new space, we're going to be focusing on adding some ceramics facilities to meet the community's needs. We're going to be partnering with the local art school, the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, have internships, have potentially residencies in the future, partnering with other disability orgs. Like I mentioned, some specialized ceramics spaces. We not only want to have this be, our bread and butter. We're going to have our visual arts studio, our painting and drawing, but also we want to draw people in and really elevate this community, and help our arts of life artists elevate their practice and really have something special available to them because they deserve it. They're great artists. So we're going to have some raku kilns, slip casting workshop, some really unique stuff that a lot of people in our local community do not have access to, that will draw people in and really help to make this a truly integrated and exciting space. Here's my last slide. So we're going beyond normalization. I think and I hope community-based programs go beyond making opportunities for normalized experiences. I think that what we've learned is centering disabled artists makes local art communities more than normal. It makes them exceptional. So I think that centering disabled artists in local communities makes us more connected. It makes communities more innovative, and it benefits everyone involved, whether they're disabled or not. Making sure that people with disabilities are seen and valued in community spaces is really key and critical during this time because we want people like Ronnie to stay out of institutions. Um, so now we have time for questions or comments. I know I'm not here, and I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, but Andriana Donahue and Denise Fisher are here to answer questions for you. And also, if you would like, you can email me. I've got my email here. It's asolar@artsoflife.org. Thank you so much for joining this presentation, and I really appreciate your time. I hope that you got something out of it, and have a great rest of your symposium. Thank you.